Today I'm talking to Debbie, who is a homeschooling mum from the UK who absolutely loves travel, embraces it fully, and with her kids has spent quite a few months in different locations, haven't you, over the
Yeah,
years?
yeah,
And actually, their style of travel is very adventurous, and you do cram in a lot of micro adventures into your travel, don't you? So a lot of zip
yes,
lining and kayaking and rock
yeah,
climbing and everything else you
yeah.
can cram in there.
Yeah.
Um, so do you want to elaborate a little bit more about, what you do as a family and your style of travel?
Yeah, sure. So we are, yeah, a family of four from the UK, and I home educate my two children, Rosie, who's 14, and Harry, who's 13. And we've been doing this for 8 years. For me, I think that traveling and adventuring is kind of a really key part of their education. And so we try and travel and adventure as much as possible. I think I mentioned to you before, I think I would love to be traveling full time. And I'm really grateful that when they were 8 and 9, we went on a 3-month adventure exploring New Zealand, Australia, and Indonesia. And that was just an amazing experience for them. And I feel that they learned just so much. What was really interesting was that even though we didn't do anything particularly like academic in the sense of book work, we all they had was their Kindles, and they love reading, and obviously you're learning just a huge amount from your natural environment, whether that be like doing a Maori, doing the haka with the Maori group, or whether that's looking at the glaciers, or they did a knife making course in New Zealand, or whether that's surfing in Australia, or looking at the gold mines, or whatever it is. There was huge amounts of experiences. But what I found fascinating was when we came home, like things like their grammar and their writing and their maths had made sort of huge strides forward, even though they hadn't done any of that. And there's a really, I think for children, actually having space in their brains to assimilate and kind of like process all the things that they've learned previously is really, really important. And so for that reason, we try and travel as much as possible, but even when we are not doing that, we always have a 10-week summer holiday, which I think is really important.
Oh,
Because
wow, love
yeah,
this.
I know that sounds like a lot, but it's not that they stop learning, because they absolutely don't, but they just have an opportunity to sort of experience their own interests, their own passions. And yeah, I think it's just really important for your space to have your brain to have space to sort of learn and assimilate everything. So yeah, but now they're sort of teens, we are not able to travel as much as we used to, because my daughter is really into acting and my son wants to play cricket for England. So they have their own interests, and they don't really want to miss their rehearsals or their plays or their sort of training sessions or their matches. So actually finding opportunities to travel is becoming increasingly difficult, but we sort of at least try and have 3 to 4 travel experiences per year, and then so we try and pack in quite a lot of adventures into those holidays. But it's really important, because I think, especially when they kind of get to the teenage years, that you're spread all over the place, and at weekends you sort of have to sort of divide and conquer and take one way and one another way. And so actually it's really, I find the traveling trips are quite bonding as a family, where we come back and we sort of learn together and go through adventures in a way that I think it's quite humbling, it really, when you do adventures together, because
Mm.
often the adult actually is in the same position as the child, in the sense that they don't necessarily, like for instance, when we did batik art in Bali, and we were all in the same position because none of us had done it before. And so it's nice for the children to feel like you're all on the same level, if that makes sense, and
Yeah.
you're all in it together and learning together.
So let's talk about your amazing trip to South Africa, and let's talk about the route that you did and where you visited, because I know a lot of families want to go to South Africa. We've had a lot of families actually posting questions about it, so it'd be great to hear your route and what you did.
Okay, so we stayed in 3 different places actually, but the first one we stayed in was Knysna, which is along the garden route, and we stayed there for 6 nights. And then we moved slightly further towards Cape Town, back towards Cape Town, in Hermanus for 2 nights. And then we stayed in Cork Bay, which is very close to Cape Town, for 3 nights at the end. So if I just sort of talk you through sort of step by step what we did, because we did kind
Yeah.
of pack it in that short time period. So in Knysna, we actually stayed in Thesen Island, which is actually a gated community. And I sort of normally I wouldn't stay in a gated community. It's not my vibe at all. We kind of like to be with the local community, but because of the kind of safety concerns, I think we were being ultra cautious, and it was really nice actually, because we're staying in this sort of property which, because it all sits on the lagoon, it came with its own kayak, and you literally could just kayak from the back of the house and just like through the backwaters, which was really pretty. So we from Knysna, we then explored sort of both ways, east and west along the coast. So I'll just go through step by step. So the
Yes.
first experience we had was probably our favorite experience, and it was the hand in trunk elephant experience, and that was at the crags near Plettenberg Bay, which is about an hour and a bit from Knysna. And it was just the most amazing experience. You literally you were allowed to brush down one by one the elephants, give them a sort of good rub down. And then you were allowed to literally walked with their trunk in your hand. And it's amazing. They're so strong. There's such power in that trunk. And then
Yeah.
my elephants are my daughter's favorite animal, so she absolutely loved it. And they walked along with them into the rainforest, and then they then showed you kind of their anatomy, so you could look inside. I mean, I did really feel that the guides had a really lovely connection with the elephants. They look really well looked after, and I wouldn't normally, I wouldn't want to do something that felt uncomfortable, but they look very, they're very comfortable. But they were so sort of comfortable with you being with them. You could have a look inside their mouths and at their tails and
Oh,
things like that.
wow.
So it was just, and then at the end we got to feed them, and it was just a lovely, lovely experience. So that was probably, yeah, our favorite one.
I was just going to add in that actually that I'm glad you brought that up, because we do have conversations in the group about elephant sanctuaries, and that's something that you put on your blog, isn't it? That it was
Yeah.
actually a really good experience, and it was a
Yeah.
genuine sanctuary.
Yeah, I do really feel that those elephants had been rescued, and they were very, 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 very well looked after. And you can tell, can't you, when they have
Yeah.
a genuine connection with their sort of with the key guide, and they knew
Yeah.
them very well, and they felt, with the feeding as well, it felt very natural, and yeah, so it felt good.
Yeah.
So the
Thank
next thing that we did was kloofing, which is canyoning for most people, but South Africans call it kloofing. And we went with Canyon, and that was also in Plettenberg Bay, and that was amazing. It's got 5-star reviews on Google, I think, and TripAdvisor, but it was a really good operation. We have done canyoning before, and it is really, really important to me that it's safe. And I did feel that they were a very safe operation. And so that kind of involved abseiling down kind of like a cliff, and then following the water course along the river. And so it was quite good, because there were different levels of ability, or like, depending on how fearful you were, you could go higher or lower with the jumps. But they were quite good. I felt they had quite a good balance of sort of gently pushing, but not to the point where you felt uncomfortable, if that makes sense. Because it's always a bit scary when you're standing on the top of a
Yeah.
giant rock jumping, and I'm terrified of heights. But but then equally, you kind of want someone just to give you a little nudge, so that you actually, you do it, and then you feel great afterwards.
I
So
bet your
it was
kids
really
loved that,
good.
didn't they?
Oh, they absolutely
I
love it.
bet
They're
they did.
totally fearless, which is really good. Yeah, a little bit frightening sometimes, that lack of fear, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the end, there's this massive sort of zip wire that goes through into a cave, which is it's just amazing, and just the beauty of it as well, because you're down sort of in this river canyon, all, just you guys and the guides, and it's just really special. It's so peaceful and quiet and beautiful, with the birds sort of and they're flying in and out, and it was, yeah. So that was a lovely experience. I definitely recommend that.
And actually,
And then
you do a lot of amazing activities, don't you? You're quite action packed with your travel, and just wanted to highlight for
yes,
people who are watching this that you've also got an incredible blog on Costa Rica, haven't you? Which
yeah,
is great for sort of slightly older kids who want to do
yes.
something
Yeah, we
while
loved Costa
traveling.
Rica. Costa Rica was amazing. Another place I'd definitely go back to. But yeah, we did do all sorts of things in Costa. We did sort of zip lining through the cloud forest there, and that was utterly terrifying for me, but the children absolutely loved it.
I always worry
There
about
was,
stopping at the end, because you get
wow,
up to
there was
speed on these things, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, the worst one of those was like it was fine. Most of them they kind of landed within the trees, so it felt like you were sort of quite encompassed. But then the last one, it literally landed on this pylon, which was like waving in the wind. And you, so you're on top. So even when you land, you're still terrified that you're going to fall off. But never mind. Sorry, back to South Africa.
Sorry, yes, I
Yeah.
digress.
So another thing that we did then, also in Plettenberg Bay, we actually did this in one day with the Kloofing, which we went to. I don't know quite how to pronounce it, but I think it's Tsitsikamma National Park, and there's sort of the Storms River and their big sort of hanging bridge down there. We went, did a kayak and lilo adventure. So that basically that involved, if the weather's quite calm, you can from the sort of entrance you kayak along the sea and under the bridge. But because it was quite wild when we were there, then we actually walked along and then got in the kayaks a bit further along. But actually, because kind of it promised sea kayaking, they then let us go out to the sea, and it was pretty wild actually. I mean, it literally the waves were crashing over the kayaks, but it was a really cool experience. The kids loved it again. I was a bit panicked. It always is the way. But then we went from there, we went back under the bridge and kayaked along again this huge river gorge with sort of towering cliffs on either side. And it's just stunningly beautiful. And I just really, really special experience. And so we kayaked all the way along there, and you can kind of explore in the little caves as you go. And then once the river gets to the point where it's too shallow to kayak, you get out the kayaks, and then they get these lilos, and you float along the river on lilos, which is
Love that.
really fun. And then obviously we were with a stag do, which was actually really fun. And they were quite good fun, good guys. And so then there was like a balancing competition on the lilos, who could stand up for longest and things. And then after that there was an opportunity where there was sort of like these sort of deeper pools where you could go up high again on the rocks and jump in and things. So that again, the kids love doing that. I did do
Lots
one,
of
but
water and jumping and fun,
yeah, lots.
basically, on your
Yeah,
adventure.
that was one day that we did the kloofing and the kayak and the lilo. And the kayak and the lilo also was with Untouched Adventures. And I wouldn't say it's as good an operation, if I'm being really honest, as like the Africanyon for the kloofing. But it's quite disorganized, and there's quite a lot hanging around. But I think it's worth it still because it's such an amazing adventure. But just to sort of give that, it wasn't perfect.
Okay.
So that was one day. Um, and the elephant encounter we did the day before, and then the day afterwards we went the opposite way back towards Cape Town for about an hour and a half to Mossel Bay. And then we did two adventures on that day. And the first was it's called the Human Origins Tour. And that was really interesting. So basically there are these caves at Mossel Bay where they have found evidence of human activity from 160,000 years ago. And they think it's the oldest evidence of humans using they use the ochre as it's like a red color. They use the pigment to sort of decorate their bodies, or probably decorate their houses as well. And the reason they knew that is because they could date the ochre back to 160,000 years ago, and they can see the striations within the ochre, which would prove that they were grinding it down and using it, which is just amazing.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
they also
Educational as well.
yeah, exactly. They also had these kind of like these stone tools as well. I think it was the earliest evidence of them using like heat treatment to kind of create these tools. So that was a really fun tour. And that was also a really beautiful spot. So again, just on the coast in these like you just have to go down these steps, and then there's all these caves, and you get to explore one of them with this guide, and you kind of get the history side of it as well, which is good. And then later that afternoon, we went for a sunset safari at, I think it's called Botley's Cop. It's hard to pronounce actually. Let me just have a look. Yeah, Botley's Cop Private Game Reserve. And I'd done a bit of a review on that before I went. And again, mixed reviews, and especially in terms of the accommodation. And it's so much more expensive to stay in a private game reserve than it is, to stay locally. But then there was this perfect option, which is you can literally go as a day visitor and have a sunset safari, so which I feel is the best bit of staying in a private game
Yeah.
reserve anyway. And it was just fabulous. We had 3 hours drive, and we saw like elephants, we saw a hippo opening its mouth, which I've never seen before, which was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and a baby, like a 6-week-old baby rhino, and it was so cute because she was he I don't actually know whether it was a he or she, but they basically she was really trying to protect her mother. So it was when the truck came up, it tried to sort of like mock charge us, but it got so tired within about 2 seconds, it just then sat on the ground and fell asleep. So it was really sweet and just like amazing bird life. We saw this Denham's bustard doing its like special display to try and attract the ladies, and there was just, I mean, so much wildlife to see. It was fabulous.
That's
So that was,
interesting you said about the day, like doing the tour though, because it
yeah,
can put families off. The cost, roughly how much
absolutely.
was it? Can you remember off the top of your head how much it was?
I think, yeah, I think it was £175 for four of us for
Oh wow,
that
that's
day
amazing.
trip, which wasn't too bad when I'm pretty sure, I don't know exactly how much it cost to stay there, but it is really quite expensive, I think.
I
So
imagine.
that felt like, although it was expensive, it was still felt okay for four of us.
Yeah,
To do
value.
that. So yeah, pretty good value. Well, very good value, I think. The only problem was then we had to drive at night, obviously, because it was a sunset safari. But I still felt that was still pretty safe because we were driving along the N2, which is the main highway in South Africa. The only sort of problems with driving at night were that they have these, the power outages, so they call it
Yeah,
the load shedding. We
load
happened to be
shedding.
at
Yeah.
Yeah, we happened to be at level 6 when we were there, which is like something like 6 hours of electricity outage in the day. And that meant that the traffic lights were out. So there was a few hairy moments around sort of cars driving at you. But I think you just have to be a bit more, you just have to be aware, happy to be prepared to put your foot down and get out of people's way. And it was still fine. So that was good.
You survived the tail.
So, yeah, I did. I did.
I
And yeah,
forgot
what
about
did
the
you?
traffic lights wouldn't work.
Yeah, exactly. That was probably the worst bit. The rest of the load shedding was okay because the most restaurants have alternative power sources anyway. So you don't have any problems if you're going out to eat. And most houses have big kind of like lights that are charged throughout the day, and then that you use those in the evening. So yeah, it was absolutely fine. And in fact, almost it encourages people to find alternative sources of energy, to have backup, how to
Yeah.
use solar power where they can. But obviously then there's a big split between the rich and the poor, but yeah, it wasn't too bad. But I think I put a link on the website actually, because there is a site which tells you exactly what the schedule is, which is really important to know actually, because it caught us out a few times. But
I saw that. That's really handy. Yeah.
yeah. So we went up to the East Head in Knysna, and there's an amazing restaurant there called the East Head Cafe, which sort of overlooks the lagoon and the sea. And that's got the most amazing food. Really, really, really tasty. We went back a couple of times, but it's also just really pretty just to go up there because that's sort of the entrance of where the sea comes in and then creates the lagoon around Knysna. So that was really pretty.
I think you
So
said in your blog or your email to me about the food was really good overall anyway, wasn't it? You had really
yeah, it's like universally. It doesn't matter if you're sort of to stop by the side of the road and or you're going to a really fancy restaurant. There, just the food is really genuinely really good and really really good value. So I think it
yeah.
was about £40 for four of us to go and eat out, a proper big meal with drinks and everything, which is so much cheaper than the UK. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot.
yeah.
Yeah, that is really good value.
Yeah, so that was really nice. So then moving on, so after we finished in Knysna, which we totally loved, we then drove back along the coast towards Hermanus and stayed there for 2 nights. In this amazing, it was very small little Airbnb, but it literally looked over the ocean, and there was sort of a rock formation directly outside our house, and so obviously James and the kids wanted to explore straight away, and they found the little penguin. Which is so cute. Just one of them, little penguin living on its own and then it was just felt like our penguin for those couple of days. So we went and checked it was okay and everything. It was just very sweet.
I like that.
Um, yeah, and then in Hermanus we had sort of 2 days and two different things. One day we did fat biking, which I've never done before, and actually probably was our second favorite thing to do actually.
I
And
haven't
so that actually was in Gansbaai, spelled Gansbaai, I think. And that it was with, I'm just trying to check who it was with, the Fat Bike Tours South Africa, and our guide Dave was fantastic, really really good guy. And so you literally start at the top of the nature reserve, and then he sort of shows you how to use the fat bikes because they're slightly different than normal bikes. And then you ride through the dunes all the way down. And at the end, you're then picked up at the bottom, so you don't have to ride up hills, which is handy.
Oh, that's
And
good.
then
Do you go back to up to the top again, do you?
and we only did it once. We only did
Oh,
it once, but yeah, but it sort of takes that long to get down. But throughout that, there are just these giant sand dunes, and you go to the top, and then some of them are really steep, and you don't really get that sense until you're right at the top, because obviously it all just looks like a big pile of sand. But you're at the top, and it's really quite steep. But he's quite good in the sense he sort of showed us how to go slowly and not go slowly, and so I went slowly, and the kids went really, really quickly. But yeah, it was really, really good fun. And he was just a really knowledgeable guy about the area and the flora and the fauna. So there was this cancer bush, which apparently is really good to boost your immunity. So we sort of tried a
oh,
few of the leaves, which were very bitter, but South Africans use it to try and ward off any sort of bugs and illnesses and things. And then like they sort of showed us like tracks for the caracal cat and all sorts of different animals. And then also from there, you could literally see over the ocean, and you could sort of see the baby whales coming up and looked
oh,
almost like
yes.
playing. Yeah, I mean, we were at the end of the whale season, so we didn't get amazing sightings, but I think, I think it's between July, we're trying to check here, June to December, the whales come into that bay and they have their babies there because it's like in the safe waters, and then they'll go out from there. So sort of in peak season, I think there are loads of whales there. So it's a great place to go if you want to see whales.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then the
I didn't
second
think,
day we did horse riding on the beach, which again, I love horse riding on the beach for some reason. I just think it's really liberating, and you can't do it in the UK. Everyone's very strict about how well you can and can't go in the UK. And I love going horse riding in different countries because they're just more free, and it's just
yes.
yeah. So with the horse riding, we went with Hans by I'm just checking my notes here. Hans by Horse Riding Company. I would have wanted to have gone with Pearly Beach horse riding. They had amazing reviews, and they sort of go sea swimming with the horses as well,
Oh,
which
wow.
is amazing. But they were fully booked for us, so I would recommend if you want to book in early with them.
You've
So
got
that
so many
was
great recommendations. I love the fact that you're prepped with all your names and lists.
oh, thank you. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Well, it's nothing worse when someone says something like, oh, I really want to do that, and then they don't say where it is.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah. Then you start Googling.
yeah. Actually, on another recommendation in that area, on our way back one of those days, we stopped off for lunch at Walker Bay Vineyards and Birkenhead Brewery, and the food was really tasty, and you could do some beer tasting or wine tasting, and it was like the backdrop it almost looked like in the photo looks like I have just taken a backdrop from the internet and then put my husband in front of it with some
I
beer in
saw
front of him,
that.
but
Yeah.
it's just
With his little
it's
wine beer tasters.
yeah, but it was just genuinely just stunning. It was amazing. So that was really good. And then our final location was Cork Bay, but on our way to driving from Hermanus to Cork Bay, we stopped off in Stellenbosch. We did try and get to Franschhoek actually, but
I
they'd
did
shut the
you?
pass. So I was just we were like, okay, we're
Oh,
gonna bail on that and try Stellenbosch, because actually I've been recommended Spear restaurant by my friend who goes, she works over in South Africa quite a lot, and she loves it there. And the food was really, really amazing. And I mean, I was driving, so I didn't get to try the wine, but my husband likes his wine, and they do some amazing wine there. So that was really nice. I mean, there's probably tons to do in Stellenbosch, but I felt like we had so much on the agenda that we kind of had to just sort of do a bit from everything. I mean,
yeah.
that's why we'll definitely have to go back.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds like you probably will because you loved it,
yeah,
didn't you?
yeah, definitely. So so we stayed in Cook Bay, and again it was the personal recommendation of my friend who stays there regularly and says it's very safe. And that we stayed in a big artist's house, which was really eclectic and just fabulous. It had a pool, and it had its own sort of wood-fired hot tub, which was awesome, and it overlooked the ocean. And it's just a very, very relaxed place to be. Very, just a lovely. I really wish I had longer there. Actually, it had a really nice vibe, and it was lovely to have the ocean literally next door. The restaurants there were amazing, and it was really easy to get around from there. And you could just literally walk. I think it was about a 15-minute walk up to Muizenberg Beach, which is an enormous white sand beach and there were loads of people surfing there. I think that's one of the great places to go surfing. So that, yeah, it was a fantastic place to, I mean, in terms of recommendations for restaurants, we loved Satori's, and that was amazing food there. But on the last night we went to Harbour House, which is a little bit more expensive, but really, really nice food. Um, and my friend also recommends Brass Bell and Cape to Cuba because they have amazing cocktails and mocktails if you're interested
Oh
in that.
wow, these are like
Yeah.
micro details now. I'm
Yeah.
loving this.
Sorry. Is
And
that okay?
Cork was your favourite area, wasn't it? The Cork Bay was your favourite place, was that right?
I don't know. I loved it all. I mean, I probably between Cork Bay and Knysna. I mean, I did like the garden route. I thought the garden route was stunningly beautiful, but there was just something very, very relaxed about Cork Bay. I mean, maybe it's also partly because that we got to the point where like, where I've done so many adventures, we do need a little bit of relaxation time. So we did
Yeah.
actually just spend some time being a bit more chilled. But yeah, no, it was really, really pretty, and there's just tons to do really. So from there, we only did two sort of adventures. One was we had to do Boulders Beach and the penguins because I mean that's just amazingly special, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the thing with the Boulders Beach, I would recommend there's a couple of tips really. I went with my daughter, and I just went with cash, and they don't take cash. They don't take a card. So luckily, some very kind South African paid for us, and then we gave him the cash. But they were very they weren't prepared. The people on the sort of the till were not prepared to take my cash, so it's worth
Unusual.
taking a card.
That's unusual,
Yeah,
isn't it, actually,
it is
for a
unusual.
tourist
Yeah,
destination?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then and we went to so the visitor centre's at one end of the beach, and it's at the Foxy Beach end. And from there you can sort of walk along the walkways, and like there's hundreds and hundreds of penguins, but that you're on a sort of a raised walkway and you can look down on them. But I kind of knew that you could get a bit closer to the penguins, and actually if you then follow, there's a walkway from that part all the way to another end, which is Boulders Beach. And on Boulders Beach, you can go down onto the beach, you can get in the sea there. But also there's these just giant boulders, and you can sort of climb over them and go through sort of squeeze through them. And then the penguins all come onto the beach in these little sort of like hidey hole areas. And Rosie basically, she just straight in there, right, she got really, really close to me. She literally sat next to these penguins, which was just amazing for her. She just loved it.
I bet.
So I would make sure you get to the right bit of the penguin colony. And then the second adventure we had from there was we hiked a Table Mountain, which felt like something we had to do, but it was really lovely hike actually. We went up the Plettenberg Gorge, and it took us about an hour to climb up to the top. That was quite a fat. I mean, we were walking quite quickly, maybe an hour to an hour and a half. Um, and again, people had sort of made out that Table Mountain wasn't safe, and even the guidebook says that muggings are sadly not rare events on Table Mountain, which made me think, oh, that doesn't feel great. But I just didn't feel unsafe at all. I mean, it was we went up this route, which was very easy to follow. You're not going to get lost going up there, and there were quite a
Mm.
few people with us. But once we were at the top, you could sort of go up to the right. There's the top where the cable car comes up, and the sort of viewing point. And luckily we were blessed with amazing weather, so we could sort of see out all around us, and it was fabulous. But then from there, when we came down, rather than going down the mountain, we went across, and actually you can then walk right across the top of the table part of it, the sort of flat top. And that was we were probably there were a couple of other people there, but just pretty much us. Again, we were told that there were people, you have to be careful because people live in the mountain and they might attack you, but there were kind of no places for them to hide really. It was quite open and exposed, and it was just really beautiful up there. So we did about a mile walk across the top, and then before we went back down again. I would say if you have younger children, that the going down is harder than the going up.
Oh, that's
So,
good.
you could always go up the mountain and then come back down the cable car, because the entrance to the Plettenberg Gorge is just a little bit further from the past the cable car entrance, and you can park on the roadside there. So it's really easy if you come down the cable car just to walk back up.
That's a good tip. I think actually the safety aspect is something that a lot of parents are concerned about. And I've
Yeah,
seen a few questions in the group where people are nervous about
yeah.
traveling around South Africa. And I think especially when you're doing it under your own steam and driving, I'd love to sort of know, because I think that was something you were concerned about, and find out how you tackled it and what your evaluation was really.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So To be honest, we booked this and then started to worry because because it's typical us. I think it's because we do happen to know quite a lot of South Africans who have moved to the UK, and they just shared quite a few horror stories. But that you kind of have to sometimes put those into context. They might have lived there for 30 years and had one experience, and you're going there for two
Yeah.
weeks. So the likelihood of you having an experience is quite low. Um, and but when you hear lots of stories all in one go, it's easy to kind of feel overwhelmed, I think. But then I suppose in terms of before we went, we tried to listen to as much as we could, but try and take everything with a pinch of salt. That sounds not to disregard it, because I know that their intention was absolutely to try and help us to be safe, um, but just to kind of like not panic so much.
Mm.
So I have a consultant whose wife is South African, and they go back quite a lot, and his advice was quite helpful. And actually, in terms of coming out of the airport, there are a very, very large townships all around the airport, and actually, so it's really important that you know your route, because you could easily get lost. Um, and we did actually use sat nav because I used sort of James's connection through work. Actually, from a safety point of view, we deliberately booked accommodation that we felt were in safe places. So two of the three were in gated communities, which had their own security and felt very safe. If I'm honest, this is quite embarrassing to admit, but it shows you how safe they are. In Knysna, we did this ridiculous thing that we've never been so stupid actually traveling. We literally left the keys in the door. I thought that James had locked the door, and he thought I'd locked the door. And like an hour and a half later, we're in the middle we've on this walk, and we go, oh, where are the keys? And we like realize that we've literally left the keys in the door with the keys to the kayak car sitting on the drive, like right next to it. All stuff. And so James ran back to the house, and they were still in the door, and it was fine. So I think it made me just feel a little. I think that was meant to happen. I think to just
Yeah.
make me relax a little bit more. But so the accommodations felt very, very safe. The last accommodation was just a house with it, in Cork Bay, and they did have like their own security cameras. And they were there's definitely a focus on safety. And the lady who showed us in did say to us, don't wander around after 9 o'clock at night. But I think you just have to be sensible, and
Mm.
and that's it really. I mean, at the end of the day, you can have problems, anywhere you travel. I
Yeah.
remember distinctly on the 1st of March 2019 of flying out of New Zealand and talking to the air hostesses and saying how safe a country it is. It's been amazing. I felt so safe. And like 2 weeks later, they had those the shootings in the mosques, and there were
Oh
51 people killed
yes.
in Christchurch literally 2 weeks later. So, even the safest places you go, you these things happen sadly, and you can't. There's an element of risk wherever you go. I think
Yeah.
but so you know, in terms of the reality of South Africa for us, I felt safe the whole time. Like, I didn't have any experience. That's not to say that people don't have dangerous experiences, but we didn't even feel it just felt very safe. And I suppose the biggest test is, would you return? And resoundingly yes, we would absolutely go back. I think it was our favorite holiday, and we've been to some quite cool places in the last few years, like Costa Rica and Egypt and St. Lucia, and this was by far and away our favorite actually of all of them. We
That
did.
shows that you must have felt relaxed then, because if you were
Yeah.
feeling apprehensive the whole time, you wouldn't have enjoyed it. Uh,
No, exactly. And we definitely relaxed into it. And we were quite sensible, apart from that ridiculous moment with the keys. We were quite sensible the rest of the time, in terms of not leaving your bags out on show in the car when you parked here, or not sort of leaving phones out on tables or when you're in a restaurant or whatever. But
yeah.
and kind of like, if I'm honest, sometimes I lock the door when we're in the car, which I probably wouldn't even think to do anywhere else. But these are all probably because I'd been told to do it. I didn't actually feel
Yeah.
unsafe really at any point. And driving at night was something we were told not to do. We did do it twice. I mean, when we had to come back from the sunset safari and late at night, and that was down the main motorway, and so that was fine. And then in Hermanus, actually, we were out having food quite late, but again, it just felt very safe, if I'm honest. And so, I mean, it might be different if you're in the middle of Cape Town. We didn't stay inside Cape Town, so then maybe that's a different experience. But
Yeah.
where we were, it felt very safe. So yeah,
I
as
think
I
that's great to know, isn't it? It's understanding what the bound, like what the safety concerns are before you go there, being aware of
Yeah,
them, and then
yeah,
just taking precautions. But like you
yes,
say, these things can happen,
anywhere.
in every
Yeah,
country. It's just making sure
yeah,
you've got your wits about you a little bit, isn't it? And being a bit more
yes,
streetwise,
yes,
what's
absolutely.
happening.
And not leave keys indoors. That's silly. That's just silly,
Not
isn't
leaving keys in doors.
it?
Yeah. Although I do it in my house sometimes. My son comes back from school and he's like, "Mum, close me the door," with the car key hanging off.
I'm glad it makes me feel better. Thank you.
One of the questions that we have cropping up in the community for any trip is budget. We have a lot of
Mm,
cost-conscious parents in the group. I'm one of them. I like to get
mhm,
value, and you obviously you've
mm,
spent a lot on your activities and
mm.
your adventures when you arrive, but really
Yeah,
good to get an understanding of what the budget was and how you
yeah.
normally sort of allocate it.
Okay, so I kind of have broken it down by the different elements because, I think there are things here that we probably spent quite a lot of money on that we don't need to spend money on. So for instance, the accommodation, we did spend £2,150 on it, but you absolutely could go a lot cheaper than that. That was our choice, and that was all through Airbnb. The car hire was £890, so that was quite expensive. Our flights were quite cheap because they were £1,250 for four of us to get there, but that was with some air miles that we have that we're
Wow.
using. But even without those, I still think it was the cheapest place to fly with Virgin, considering how far you're going,
Yeah, that's
sort of
great.
anywhere really. It was really good value. And then the trips cost us a lot. That was £936. But again, we absolutely packed it in and we did loads. And you don't have to spend all of that. That was a choice. And so food, including food, I added it all up to about 6,250. Again, it's about £40 for a meal out. We eat a lot. I have a 13-year-old son who's 6'1", who's just enormous and eats a huge, and I eat a lot as well, if I'm honest. So, it's really hard to like sort of estimate for other people, isn't it? But that's what we probably spent, about 6,250. But again, I think you could definitely make that a significantly smaller number depending on what you did and where you stayed, and you could still have an amazing time. That's just what we did, our sort of personal
Yeah.
choice.
I actually think, bearing in mind and having looked at your blog of everything you did, you crammed
Yeah,
so much in that actually for a family of four, that's really good
yeah,
value. Imagine if you were
I think
paying
so,
for
yeah.
an organized tour, for example,
Yeah,
it would
yeah,
cost
yeah,
so much more. And also you got the safari in there as well, which,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
can
I
cost
think
a
I
lot.
think honestly, if you did an organized tour, you'd probably be looking at that like per person.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
Yeah, because you've done so
yeah. So I think
much.
it is really, really good. I think it's really good value. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So before we go, Debbie, can you
Yeah.
share what's coming up on your travel plans?
Okay. So we're actually in a week and a half going to Antigua, which in one respect doesn't sound massively adventurous, but I think we really want to practice scuba diving a bit more with the children, and it just feels quite a really nice, safe, amazing place to go scuba diving. So we're going to do a bit more scuba diving there, and then, I mean, later in the year we tend to go away in sort of October, November time as well. I would love to go to India. I've never been to India, and it's one that is massively on my bucket list. So either India or possibly back to Southeast Asia.
If you go
And
to
then
India,
sort of,
I'm linking up Sarah Steiner from our group.
oh yes,
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 because
she's
she'll be able
amazing.
to
I've
help
followed
you.
her. She's
Yeah,
fabulous. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. That and yeah, and then within the sort of in the summer, probably exploring a bit of Spain. We're all learning Spanish actually, so both the children and I'm learning Spanish as well. So that'd be quite exciting. And then it's probably somewhere in the UK as well. So yeah.
Thank you. You've got very exciting adventures coming up. One in 1.5 weeks is amazing. I'm very jealous.
Yeah.
And where can we find you? Because your blog is superb for the families in this
Thank
group
you.
who are planning a trip to places that you've been to. They're really good because they're jam-packed full of your recommendations, like you've done in this, generously done in this chat. So
Yeah.
where can we find you?
So it's anadventurouseducation.com. So that's my blog, and I have a Facebook site and Instagram. But yeah, all the blog posts. Whenever we go traveling somewhere, I will write a kind of detailed review, of what we did to try and, help other people going through the same experience. So that's all on my blog.
Thank you so much. It's lovely
Thank
to meet
you.
you.